She was supposed to disappear without a trace, another pawn in a deadly underworld war. But the night she was kidnapped, something went terribly wrong, because the man who ordered her capture became the only man willing to burn entire cities just to keep her alive. And what began as a brutal abduction would become a love story that threatened to destroy one of the most powerful mafia empires in American history. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about obsession, loyalty, betrayal, and the woman who turned a feared mafia emperor into her personal guardian. What if your kidnapper was secretly protecting you from a fate far worse than captivity? And what happens when the underworld discovers that its most dangerous king has developed a weakness that enemies can exploit? Chicago had always belonged to organized crime. From the days of Al Capone to modern underground syndicates, the city carried blood in its foundation. But by 2019, one man controlled the criminal economy of the entire Midwest. Dominic the Crown Moretti. Inspired by real American mafia bosses and modern organized crime families, Dominic ruled with elegance, brutality, and terrifying intelligence. At 38 years old, he owned gambling rings, shipping ports, high-end casinos, and private security companies that operated as legal covers for criminal networks. Unlike older mob bosses, Dominic never shouted. He spoke softly, and people died quickly when he did. His rule wasn't built only on fear. It was built on strategy. Every rival who underestimated him eventually vanished. Dominic's greatest rival was the Serbian Bratva Syndicate, expanding into Chicago. Their leader, Viktor Dragunov, a former warlord turned crime lord known for psychological torture and unpredictable violence. Victor didn't want Dominic's money. He wanted his throne. And Victor believed every king had one fatal weakness: family, love, or pride. He just needed to find Dominic's. Across the city lived Isabella Reyes, a 26-year-old art restoration specialist working in a historic museum. She spent her days restoring centuries-old paintings damaged by time. Isabella loved preserving beauty, saving history, protecting stories. She avoided danger, avoided crime, avoided anything connected to violence. But her older brother, Miguel Reyes, was secretly laundering money for Viktor Dragunov, and Isabella had absolutely no idea. When Victor discovered Miguel had been secretly leaking financial data to Dominic Moretti, he decided to send a message, not by killing Miguel, but by taking someone he loved, Isabella. One evening, as Isabella closed the museum, black SUVs blocked her exit. Armed men surrounded her. Within seconds, she was unconscious and transported to an undisclosed penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. But the kidnapping didn't go according to Victor's plan, because Dominic Moretti had intercepted Victor's operation, and instead of delivering Isabella to Victor, Dominic took her for himself. When Isabella woke up, she wasn't tied. She wasn't locked in chains. She was lying in a luxurious bedroom overlooking the city skyline. Guards stood outside. Medical staff monitored her health. Expensive clothing filled the wardrobe. It looked less like imprisonment and more like royalty, until Dominic walked in. Dominic explained calmly, "You were taken because of your brother's betrayal. If Victor had gotten you first, you wouldn't be alive." Isabella didn't cry, didn't beg. She stared at him and said, "So you kidnapped me. To save me?" Dominic hesitated. and that hesitation confused him, because no one ever spoke to him like he was human. Dominic ordered his security chief Leonardo Russo to place Isabella under constant surveillance, not as a hostage. As protected property, she was forbidden from leaving the estate, but she was given full freedom inside it. Books, art supplies, private garden access, personal chef. Dominic convinced himself it was strategy, but everyone around him knew it was something else. Isabella refused to act grateful. She challenged Dominic constantly, questioned his morality, criticized his empire. One night she told him, "You built a kingdom out of fear, but fear always collapses." Dominic almost lost his temper, but instead he laughed, because she reminded him of the life he abandoned decades earlier. Meanwhile, Victor discovered Isabella was alive, and under Dominic's protection, that changed everything. Now she wasn't leverage against Miguel. She was leverage against Dominic himself. And Victor prepared a war unlike anything Chicago had seen in years. A convoy transporting Isabella to a hidden safe house was ambushed. Explosions tore through the street. Bullets shattered armored vehicles. Dominic personally arrived with backup forces, and in front of his entire crew, he shielded Isabella with his own body, taking a knife wound meant for her heart. That moment changed their relationship forever. While Dominic recovered, Isabella refused to leave his side. She treated his wound, read to him during sleepless nights, spoke to him like he was more than a criminal legend. And Dominic began confessing truths he had buried for years. His abusive childhood, his rise through gang violence, the loneliness of ruling an empire built on betrayal. Dominic's captains began whispering. A king distracted by love was a vulnerable king. Some secretly contacted Victor. Others plotted internal rebellion, because in organized crime, emotion equals weakness, and weakness invites war. Dominic discovered his own men planning betrayal. The old Dominic would have executed them instantly, but Isabella convinced him to dismantle his criminal operations slowly and transition his empire into legitimate businesses. It was the most dangerous decision he had ever made, because crime families don't retire peacefully. Victor launched a full assault on Dominic's empire. Warehouses burned. Allies turned traitor. Police investigations intensified. The city descended into chaos. And Victor made one final demand. "Give me Isabella, and I end the war." Isabella secretly planned to surrender herself to Victor to save Dominic. But Dominic discovered her plan, and for the first time in his life, he begged someone not to leave him. He said, "You weren't my prisoner. You were my salvation." Dominic launched one final offensive against Victor's headquarters. Inspired by real mafia turf wars and cinematic crime warfare, the battle destroyed Victor's syndicate. Victor was captured, but instead of executing him publicly, Dominic handed him to federal authorities, ending decades of criminal bloodshed. With Victor gone, Dominic voluntarily dissolved major illegal operations. His empire transformed into international security firms, luxury hotels, and shipping corporations. But many enemies still waited for revenge. Dominic knew his power had changed, and so had he. Isabella never joined his empire, never accepted luxury as compensation. She simply stayed beside him, helping him rebuild his legacy legally. She turned his wealth into charity foundations, art restoration programs, community housing projects. She didn't rule his empire. She redefined it. History remembers kings for their conquests, but legends remember them for their transformation. Dominic Moretti kidnapped Isabella Reyes to protect her life, but in the end, she protected his soul. If this story pulled you into the dark world of mafia power and forbidden love, make sure you like this video, follow and subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next cinematic mafia story. And tell me in the comments, do you think a monster can truly change? Or does power always corrupt love in the end? Because the next story might challenge everything you believe.